Welcome to the True Man Podcast. This is an invitation to radical reconstruction of a man's masculine heart and soul in a place of safe community where we dare to ask questions deep seated inside a man and explore ways to help you become a better man, a better son, a better dad, and a better spouse. Well, thanks again for joining me on the podcast today. Love having you here with me. Now, I love doing the podcast and I love having you join me every week. So, can I ask you a favor today? If you love listening to the podcast, if you're learning from the podcast, I would be honored if you would forward it on to somebody special in your life that you believe needs to hear the message. If you could do that for me, I would greatly appreciate it. It's way more than expanding the footprint of the podcast. It really is. My heart is impacting the heart of men for good. And I need your help sometimes to help me get there. So if you would forward this podcast on, it would be greatly appreciated. Now, today I want to talk with you about all the external factors that we allow to take up space in our thoughts. You know, you do. I do too sometimes. In fact, I would dare say most of us allow ourselves to spend more time worrying about external things outside of our control versus working on ourselves in order to be the best men that we want to be. So let's explore that a little bit today. Now, we've all been there, staring at an opportunity, a challenge, or even just a decision that could change the course of our lives, right? What do most of us do? Well, a lot of us freeze. We hesitate or we make excuses. And more often than not, we blame something outside of ourselves. You know what I'm talking about: the economy, a boss, a lack of resources, or just bad timing. But here is the hard truth: it's not the external factors that are really holding you back. The real obstacle is ourselves and our unwillingness to act. Now, why do I bring this up? As I talk to people and as I look at the landscape of our country right now, I see and hear a lot about fear. Now, sometimes people don't have any have to say anything at all. You can just see it in their body language. You can see the way they're acting when certain conversations come up. Now, we are living in some of the most difficult times in my lifetime, for sure. These are really hard economic times. People are really having to make hard choices. These times are political, and they are a lot of things right now have been self-induced, like high gas prices from liberals who want to control you and anything they can get their hands on. Now, I just said something that is going to draw anger from some people. Although I doubt those people are listening to the podcast, they wouldn't want to educate themselves on real facts. But those people are simply not paying attention and are low information voters. Now, having said that, what I control is my vote. Almost everything after that is out of my control. I may or may not like the outcome, but I have a hell of a lot to live for. And my decision is I'm not going to let crazy politicians control my attitude, and you shouldn't either. Do you think they care how you're feeling anyway? Clearly not. Look around you. Is our society getting any better? Does this country feel like it's improving? All right, enough on the politics. Let's talk about the real world, because you and I are the only ones that are. Now, a friend of mine had the perfect setup to start his own business. He had the experience, the skills, and even some financial backing. But instead of pulling the trigger, he kept telling me that the market isn't right or the competition is too fierce. He was always waiting for the right moment, some perfect storm to come along where all the external factors were in his favor. Years passed, and the moment has never come. He stayed stuck in the same job he's at, watching others take leaps of faith while he stood on the sidelines. Now, what's really going on here? Fear. I've already mentioned it. But not fear of the external world, fear of himself. Now, the truth is, he wasn't afraid of the market or the competition. He was afraid of falling, of putting himself out there and not measuring up. And this happens to a lot of us, right? And that fear came from within, not from anything outside of his control, even though we spend a lot of time worrying about those things too. Now, have you ever experienced anything like this? You know what this story highlights is something that we all wrestle with. We tend to focus on the external factors because they give us an easy way out. If the world around us is the problem, then it's not our fault. We didn't take action, right? But deep down inside, we know that's just a cover. The real challenge lies in taking a hard look at ourselves and admitting that maybe the reason we're stuck in life is because we're not doing the work internally. So, what is the trap here? Well, it's human nature to focus on what's happening around us. In a world filled with uncertainty, chaos, and constant change, it's easy to point to external factors as the source of our fear. The economy is bad, political instability is growing, the market is flooded with competition. There's no shortage of reasons to feel anxious about the future. But these external factors feel real, tangible, and often they are outside of our control. In fact, listen to this. Chapman University in Irvine, California did their annual study of the top 10 fears in America in 2023. I don't have the 2024 yet, but I'm sure they're somewhat similar, given the first few I'm going to mention here. Here they are. Number one, people fear corrupt government officials, but yet we keep voting for them. Number two, economic and financial collapse. Probably a lot of reasons to be worried about that. Number three, Russia using nuclear weapons. How about number four, the U.S. becoming involved in another world war? Five, people I love becoming seriously ill. Imagine that. The people that are closest to you are number five on the list. People I love dying is number six, and pollution in our drinking water is number seven. Folks, I have news for you. If Russia had a nuclear weapon they were going to use, they probably would have used it on Ukraine already. These things are way outside of your control. Nowhere on that list is I'm worried about my mental attitude or how I show up or how can I better myself today. In fact, people are more concerned about political officials that they keep voting for year in and year out versus bettering themselves. Now, you have to admit that makes little sense and will basically drive you bonkers before you ever become a great person that you're capable of. But here's the kicker. Well, these things are real and can have an impact. There is no doubt about that, but they don't hold the power that we think they do. The real power, the thing that truly determines whether we succeed or fail, lies within us. It's not the external circumstances that paralyze us, it's our reaction to them. Now, when we focus too much on our external crap that's going on around us, we give up our power. We let the world dictate how we live our lives, how we make our decisions, how we approach challenges. Now, it's a mindset that says, I'll take action when the world is right, when the stars align, or when the risk is low. And that kind of mindset guarantees one thing and one thing only: nothing happens. Take the stock market, for example. People love to talk about the stock market. Two people can look at the same market trends. One sees opportunity, while the other sees risk. The difference isn't the market itself, it's how each person interprets the situation. The person who sees opportunity has trained themselves to act despite uncertainty, while the person who sees only risk is letting fear dictate their behavior. Now, this is a trap of focusing. This is the trap of focusing on external things. It gives us an excuse not to take responsibility for our own actions. Now, if we can point to something outside of ourselves as the reason for our fear, then we don't have to confront the fact that we may that maybe, just maybe, we're the ones holding ourselves back. Now let's flip the script a little bit. What if, instead of letting external factors control us, we took ownership of our internal world? What if we recognize that the real obstacle isn't the economy or the competition, politics, and the market, but our own fear and self doubt? Now, this is where self awareness comes into play. The more in tune we are with ourselves, the better we can recognize when fear is taking over. And more importantly, we can begin to see that this fear isn't something to be avoided. No, not at all. It's something to be confronted, to face head on. And when we take action on ourselves, we build our skills, we strengthen our mindset, and we push ourselves out of our comfort zone. We begin to shift the focus away from external factors. Very important. We start to realize that we have more control than we thought. And the external world, well, it may still be chaotic, but it no longer dictates our decisions or our actions. Now think about our great Navy SEALs. If you're a Navy SEAL in combat, you are the man. The environment they're in is unpredictable, dangerous, and constantly changing, but a SEAL doesn't freeze up or make excuses. If they do, somebody probably dies. They have trained their minds to remain calm and focused no matter what's happening around them. Their success in these extreme situations has little to do with the external environment, and it has a lot to do, it has everything to do with their internal preparation and mental toughness. Now, we can apply that same mindset to our everyday lives. When we stop waiting for the perfect external conditions and start working on becoming the kind of person who can handle any condition, we take our power back. And you want your power back, don't you? Now, this brings us to another piece of the puzzle, faith. If we're honest, if we have very little control over most of what happens in the world, but instead of letting that paralyze us, what can you use it as a reminder for? That really you're not the one ultimately in control. Faith in God gives us the foundation that nothing in the world can shake. And when we truly trust that God is in control, it frees us from the need to micromanage every little detail of our lives. Stop gripping the wheel so tight, right? It frees us from the need to let fear dictate our decisions because we know that the outcome isn't entirely up to us. Now, having strong faith in life helps us put those external factors in perspective. Yes, things may go wrong. They probably will go wrong. Yes, the world may be unpredictable, but we serve a God who is sovereign over all of it. And if he is for us, who can be against us? Now, this doesn't mean we sit back and do nothing. No, waiting for God to solve all of our problems, it means we do our part internally and externally while trusting that God is ultimately in control of the outcome. It means that we take responsibility for our actions while resting in the knowledge that we're not in this fight alone. In Matthew 6, chapter 6, verse 34, Jesus tells us not to worry about tomorrow because tomorrow will worry about itself. Now, this isn't a call to be reckless or careless. It's a reminder that our job is to focus on today, to do the work that's in front of us, and to leave the rest in God's hands. You know, I have throughout several times in my life circled back to that point in scripture. The reason for this is simple. Too much of the time I have tried to control my life and the circumstances I found myself in the moment. And I've actually come to realize that the majority of the time I was sitting in self pity or worry over something that I had very little control over. Now, what do I control? Well, that is my faith and my mind. This means that I have to control what I feed my mind so that I'm at my best. Now, when we allow external factors to control us, we get caught in a cycle of fear and inaction. And when we wait for the perfect conditions to act, man, most of the time those conditions never show up. And so we stay stuck and paralyzed by the fear of what might happen. But when we shift our focus to internal actions and trust in God's plan, we break free from that cycle and we start taking steps, even if they're small. And we stop letting fear have the final say. The market may still be tough, the competition still may be fierce, but we're no longer bound by those external realities. Taking control of our internal world, our internal mind, our mindset, our skills, our faith, it is the key to overcoming fear and all of the things I'm talking about today. When we focus on what we can control, we stop letting the world dictate our future. And when we trust that God is in control, we gain the courage to face whatever challenges come our way, knowing that the outcome is ultimately in his hands. Now, as I wrap up today, the battle with fear isn't about what's happening outside of us. It's about what's happening inside of us. External factors are always going to be there, and we will never have complete control over them. But we do have control over how we respond and how we prepare and how we trust God. And the more we take responsibility for our internal world, the more we build our self awareness, discipline, and faith, the less power fear is going to have over us. Instead of being driven by external circumstances, we become driven by a sense of purpose, confidence, and trust in God. So the next time fear creeps in, don't ask, what's happening outside of you? Ask, what's happening on the inside of you? And remember, that's the one who truly controls your future. Isn't that the world you want around you? Isn't that right there, friends, is the God who created you? Well, I just want to say, if you're battling these external fears and all this external stuff is just eating you up, feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to talk with you about it. Free initial call. Just send me an email at mike@truemanlifecoaching.com. I'd love to talk to you about what's going on in the world because it's rough out there. Now, I really enjoyed being with you today. And again, if you enjoyed this podcast, send it on to somebody that you care about and leave me a great review on your favorite podcast channel. Until next week, go out and make this your very, very best day ever. Thanks for listening.